Good.
Okay, give me a second here. I'm not as fast as what I should be in the middle of COVID with everything happening.
So where are you, Greg? Where are you physically?
Yeah, physically in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, okay, cool. All right,
Yeah.
so you're right down the street from me.
Mentally, who knows? But been a good day today. And remind me where you are again?
I'm currently right now in Chapel Hill.
Oh, cool. Okay. But the office is...
It's in DC, yeah.
DC,
I was in
that's what I thought.
DC. Yeah, I just got here. I was in DC yesterday, over the weekend. I was there all weekend, and I was in the office yesterday and got here this morning.
I was going to ask if you were applying or interviewing for the Chapel Hill basketball job, but saw they just named that. So you're a few days late.
Yeah, you got to have the right bloodline according to the people connected to the program. You got to have direct connection to Dean Smith.
That's what I hear. For better or worse, right? I mean, I think Huber's going to do a good job, of course, but I'm sure there were some questionable decisions maybe before Roy about if that was a good decision or not.
But I knew it. I'm a big Carolina fan, so I'm one of those guys. I'm from North Carolina, so I'm a Dean Smith guy too. And so when Williams went and got Davis a couple years ago, and everybody started speculating then, and the fact that I don't know if you watched Carolina basketball or not.
Yep.
But Davis was just almost like a robot. Anytime Roy would do something, he would do it. If Roy would take his glasses off, Davis would take his glasses off. I mean, it's like a mimicking everything he was doing.
That's right. Best form of learning leadership is imitation, right? Before you get there.
Right.
Ironically enough, so I was born in Jacksonville, North Carolina. My dad was a Marine in Camp Lejeune.
Okay, Camp Lejeune.
Yep, but grew up in Ohio, in Toledo, and we had no good college basketball happening that much at the time. So leaned in my Carolina birthplace so I could root for Chapel Hill since they were good every year.
Yeah.
And proudly wore an Antoine Jameson jersey for probably 2 or 3 years longer than what I should have. But definitely resonate with like late 90s, early 2000s Tar Heel basketball.
Oh yeah, that's kind of crazy. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, my wife went to NC State.
Okay.
They got.
I got to be careful about what I say.
Well, they got a chip on the show. That's all. That's just got a chip. That's all it is.
Yep. Well, good, Harry. We appreciate you joining. We're gonna kind of kick things off. Like, we always like to hopefully start with topics on a lighter note, but I've been fortunate to be connected to you through the good man, Mr. Dewey Norwood. I think I've had the pleasure of working with you all before. And, we always ask if we can find, if anybody has dirt on Dewey. So I'm going to ask you that question. I'm assuming you're going to say no, because I'm 0 for 17 with that question, but not giving out hope. So would love to maybe just hear how you and Dewey know each other.
Well, I tell you what, if you're going to find some dirt, I want you to give it to me first, because I've been searching for a long time for something on him, but I can't find anything because he is squeaky clean. Dewey and I connected through Wells Fargo and his amazing work there and partnering with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. And my very first meeting with Dewey was in the box at the one of the basketball games for the Charlotte. I don't know, Hornets or Charlotte. They keep changing it. What's the name now?
Could have been the Bobcats. Probably the Bobcats before.
They're Bobcats then. But one of those names that they had, and he came into the box, and I thought he was a player, to be honest with you, because he was so tall.
Oh, he's never gonna let me live that down now. He got to you, didn't he? He got to you before today.
But yeah, that was how we got connected, and he's been a great partner.
Yeah, he's good people. Actually, the first time, now that I think about it, I met him was at an East Mecklenburg high school basketball game.
Okay.
When we first connected, so glad he used basketball to get to both of us there.
Yeah, but he played baseball in college though.
That's right. Proud UNCC 49er.
Yeah.
I think he was a right fielder.
Yeah.
Reminds me of his stats every time we go to lunch. I think he was like a 300 hitter, of course.
He was pretty good. He was pretty good.
Yeah. Last time a few years ago, we chatted, he just went back for the alumni game.
Okay.
And said, of course, he went 7 for 7 with 4 home runs and 3
Not
stolen
bad.
bases and everything.
He didn't tell you they had changed the pitch into underhanded.
That's right.
Right. He didn't tell you that.
They put home plate in center field and everything was a lot closer.
And Dr. Fauci was pitching.
That's good. That's a good way to bring it back. All right, we'll leave Dewey alone for a minute, but we're going to come back to Wells Fargo. But also know both of you went to App State, if our professional stalking is right, and you also worked at App State. And the connection here, I have a younger brother that graduated and a sister-in-law that graduated from Boone and App State, so it's a special place in our family. So we'd love to just hear if you have any favorite parts about Boone, the town.
Yeah, I tell you what, I went there as a freshman in 1982.
Okay.
And when I was there, I went there on a track scholarship, and that's what got me there, because I'm actually from, you said you were born in Camp Lejeune or Jacksonville. My hometown is Greenville, North Carolina. So that's eastern part of the state.
That's
and I was being recruited by East Carolina and Appalachian State. And I said to myself, and North Carolina A&T also was in the mix. Okay. But I picked the mountains mainly because I was a distance runner, and I had this
wise man. Yeah.
I wanted to train in the hills, and because my favorite runners were the Kenyan runners, and I didn't realize that, coming from eastern North Carolina, where the elevation is 0, and then you go to the western part of the state, the elevation is over 3,000. Kenyan runners train at 9,000 feet. So there's a big difference in the elevation there. But that was the motivation, and just had a great time up there. And one of the, you said favorite spots, was actually several spots. We would go over to Blower and Rock, to Moses Cone. There's a big, nice lake over there where we would train. That's a really nice place. And then Grandfather Mountain is another very, very special place. And in Boone, there's a place called Howard's Knob. I don't know if you recall visiting, but Howard's Knob is the highest peak in Cuyahoga County. And when I attended in 82, they had a windmill on the top of it. And that windmill was there as an experiment from I believe one of the NASA, someone put it up there to test for wind and power, and it was the world's tallest windmill.
Wow!
And so it's Howard's Knob, and that's the top of, and you could go up there and see the whole entire Boone. And when I was a freshman, a hang glider actually went up there to the top and glided all the way down to the football field to start the football season off. It was pretty cool.
Wow, on purpose, it sounds like.
Yeah, he had the football.
Yeah, I'm glad he made it. That's an important job. It's a minor question, but that windmill is not still standing, is it?
No. They took it down. You would have seen it, because the biggest thing. I mean, if you said you didn't get up to 2000, they moved it. I want to say in the late 90s when they transported it out. You can Google windmill in Boone, and it'll tell the story.
That's great. And you ran mile?
I was a distance runner. I did the mile, and I ran cross country and track, and so that was my claim to fame.
Good for you. Are you still running today to keep in shape?
Yeah. I just do just enough to keep the heart moving. I try to get up about 3 to 4 miles 5 days a week.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's my son, passed it on to him. He's a junior at Howard University. Okay. And he's a distance runner. He's on the track team there. He's on a cross country and track team there at Howard. And so I get to watch him.
That's great. Already wildly off course, which is great, the way we always plan these things, but was also fortunate to play college sports and interested, going to be a biased question, but wondering how your college athletic experience and lessons learned there prepared you for life after.
Oh man, what you're talking about, that's a great question. I still if you know anything about distance running, did you compete, Greg, yourself, or any?
Football. So the
Football.
farthest I ran was sideline to sideline trying to tackle cats who were carrying the ball. So I was wise enough to know I shouldn't be running miles, but kept it within the 70 yards across the field.
I won't tell you what the football coach used to say to us when we were running through the football field.
Yeah,
as a
not known for manners. Not known for manners.
I won't put this on your podcast.
Right.
And we just ignored the coach when we would go through there because we had fun. But yeah, so the question about taking what you've been able to do from athletics and transferring it over.
Yep.
I use it every day.
Yep.
To be honest with you, one of the things about being a distance runner is all about discipline. It's all about dedication and commitment, and it's about putting the miles in. And if you're going to be a real good distance runner, you got to put the mileage in. And we were averaging anywhere from 85 to 100 miles a week. Oof. And you can imagine what goes into that type of preparation and commitment. Yep. And then you have to wait for a long time to see if your time is going to drop. And and sometimes you may not get what you want, and then you just start all over again. And that's what life is all about, having goals, setting big goals. I had big goals in high school and went on and continued to have those goals in college, and would push myself. My goal was to break a 4-minute mile. That was you start dreaming like that, and you dream big, and it pushes you. I got up to 4:08.
I was gonna say, did you get there?
Now I got to 4:08.
I mean, it
was still, it was
that's
good.
Nothing to sneeze at. That's nothing to sneeze at.
But the point to that is having big goals, right? Yep. And that's going to push you, and that translates over into life. Translate into your work. One of the things, when I started working at Appalachian, having a vision to see what's possible, and then stretching yourself, and then focusing and working hard to achieve those goals. So that's what track did for me in terms of putting a foundation in place that kind of allowed me to think really big, and then when you transfer those over, once reality hits as it relates to aging, and your mind can be thinking one thing, but your body's going to tell you another.
That's right.
But recognizing that those skills are totally transferable.
Yeah. I mean, I co-sign all of that. I think so much to what you said, just almost controlling what you can control. Right. Of just like getting up each day and doing your best, and knowing whether it's in a race or maybe in a football game, like you're going to fall down or literally get pushed down and got to get back up, and maybe in a professional sense, metaphorically as well. But yeah, I think certainly without that athletic experience in my life, don't think I'd have those experiences to call on to kind of help prepare me for what we're all trying to do today in a professional sense. Absolutely.
And one other point is, you know what it feels like when you win, and winning is a good feeling.
Amen.
And that's in order to win, you got to work really hard at it. And you also know what it feels like to lose.
That's right.
And when you pick yourself up, you got to do it all over again.
Yep.
And that's in life, you're gonna win some and you're gonna lose some, and you got to keep your head up throughout that whole journey from that process.
Yeah, and I don't, want to go too far down, but we're already going off this exit, so it's fine. But at least for me, growing up, when sports was just really the only thing, and honestly should have been taking education more seriously, which we can get to that in a minute. But like the worst thing in the world was like missing a tackle or losing a game because you spent so much time. And then when it got into like teaching or the professional sense, of course, we're not losing jobs or that sort of stuff. But there it felt like taking risks were easier. Right. Because still in my naive 22, 23-year-old mind, I wasn't getting laughed at by my friends, or my dad wasn't seeing me miss a tackle, which was the most embarrassing thing in the world. But taking professional risk didn't feel as risky because I'd been made fun of, or you watch film messing up in football, where I can mess up in the classroom teaching and I'm going to get better in front of the students. But it wasn't projected in front of all of my colleagues like a mistake is in football or in track and racing or something else.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, would love to, I mean, transition that to your day-to-day, a pretty significant role in our country running the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. And, going to ask you some baseline questions, but think it's important, even though folks can Google this, that we kind of be as clear and helpful to our listening audience as possible.
Right.
I'm going to go into the day-to-day, I think, of what you do, but would love for you to just lift up who Thurgood Marshall is and the significance of his work in our country.
Yeah, great. And I appreciate that question. And I get up every day excited about the work that we do here at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, because we are actually carrying out the legacy of one of the greatest Supreme Court justices to ever live in this world. And I'm excited about the fact that I get to say that I work at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and Justice Marshall, as I stated, was a Supreme Court justice who actually attended 2 of our schools. He went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, which is the oldest HBCU in the country that actually started with the first undergraduate degree. Now, the oldest school that started, but it was more like a high school, was Cheney University in 1837. But the first 4-year was at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania in 1854. And and Thurgood Marshall attended that institution, and he graduated top of his class. And then after leaving Lincoln University, he wanted to go to the University of Maryland actually to get his law degree, but because of the laws in the country that prohibited African Americans from attending HBC, historically white institutions, he ended up going to Howard University Law School. And that's another one of our schools. And he graduated top of his class there. Our founder, Greg, actually went to the Supreme Court and met with Justice Marshall and asked him if he would lend his name to this organization. Our founder, Dr. Ian Joyce Payne, went there 34 years ago, and Justice Marshall didn't hesitate persist towards graduation. And Justice Marshall life was all about equity and equality and social justice, and making sure that people had what they needed in order to be successful in this country. And he clearly understood the importance of education. And by saying yes, he gave Dr. Payne the rights and the privileges to use his name for likeness, to use for images, for promotion. And we've been able to raise almost a little over $500 million by using Justice Thurgood Marshall's name. And the great thing about it, he signed those rights over to us. He didn't ask for any royalty or anything to that effect. It was all about giving back and what he could do. And we've been very fortunate to have his legacy to continue, because Justice Marshall was known as Mr. Civil Rights, and so that was, so his legacy around social justice is just incredible. And so we here at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, we get to be a part of that legacy every day.
I appreciate that context and think it's so important, right? Because oftentimes we hear about titans in the space, and sometimes we don't hear about people that we should, and we hear names, not the context or the story behind it, or how organizations like this came to be born. And so I just appreciate you offering that up, because I think it's so important and easily overlooked in organizations like many across the country.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I always like to provide that educational backdrop, because I think it's important for anybody, the audience, any organization, any group that I have not the privilege of speaking before, because his life was just that important for so many people, and it's still important to a lot of people in terms of what he represents.
And I know we'd kind of love to continue down this path as well. Your 47 member public schools, public HBCUs and PBIs, but would love in a few sentences, what does the Thurgood Marshall College Fund do day to day?
So yeah, just real high level, we have 3 basic pillars. The floor, in terms of what we do, provides scholarships. It started out as a scholarship organization primarily to give students assistance because they needed to persist towards graduation.
Right.
We serve a population of students that a large percentage are first in their family go to college. A large percentage of those students that we serve have financial challenges to be able to stay in school. So scholarships, that's the floor.
Sure.
And then in addition to that, we provide internship opportunities because we work with corporations to provide talented students opportunities to work with some of the best Fortune 500 companies in America.
Yep.
And so that's the pillar number two is internship talent based process of identifying our students and connecting them with our employers. Our board is a corporate board, so we have a great deal of support from corporations.
Right.
And the third pillar we focus on is advocacy. We're here in Washington, D.C., and we focus clearly on the sustainability of these institutions. And by working with members of Congress and Department of Education officials to make sure that funding continues
Right.
For these institutions for forever. And that's a major part because we only represent 3% of all of the universities and colleges in America.
Is that right?
So,
wow.
Yeah, HBCUs represent just 3%. And so that sometimes can people may say, well, why you need to put so much attention on the 3% sure. of a major part of the educational environment, community. And the reason being is the historical legacy of these institutions and what they have been able to do for America. And without HBCUs, there would be no middle class for Blacks in this country. There would be no Black middle class because HBCUs is a foundation of creating the Black middle class and creating all the professional jobs from medical doctors and nurses to education. All our schools have those professional programs, and those programs were able to help lift up the Black community when the white institution wouldn't allow them to attend. So that's a major part of our history.
Yeah. And you know this history better than I, so correct me, of course, if I'm wrong, but also fair to say it wasn't easy to open an HBCU when they were first originated. And also that it was born out of a lack of options and access. And so these were African-American people in our country who were sought after and understood the importance of higher education and really did everything they could in their own power and community to tie their resources together to ensure these even existed.
Absolutely. in Cheney University up in Cheney, Pennsylvania. And that was before the end of slavery in terms of the creation. So it took a lot of goodwill, a lot of philanthropic supporters to recognize the importance. In 1837, it was illegal for a Black person in this country to have an education. Right. It was, if you even try in terms of building these institutions up so that they could provide an uplift in terms of community members, specifically the African-American community. So yes.
Yeah, incredibly important. Want to pause there, but then go to another organization, albeit different, but I think this distinction is important that maybe the lay person doesn't know the quick difference between the Thurgood Marshall College Fund and the United Negro College Fund.
Yeah. So that's a good. I get that question a lot, and the simple answer to that is that we're all HBCUs, but the biggest difference is that one represent the public, meaning they get public support from their states, and the other one represent UNCF. They have private institutions, meaning they don't get. They get some of the states may give them subsidies. Little bit, but not at the level that they would get if you were a state institution. So it's one public, other private. And the 80%, this is something that's important, 80% of the students who attend historically Black colleges and universities, they attend public HBCUs. So the biggest share of students attend the public that we represent, which is close to 300,000 students, and 20% would attend the private HBCUs like Spelman or Morehouse. Those would be classified as private schools. So that's the big distinction.
Yeah, I appreciate that you clarifying that. I think it's so important. Also, again, sometimes overlooked. I taught in a Title I community for a long time, and I think if I didn't know, it wasn't like in Intro to Teaching and Higher Education 101, maybe as it should be. And I think even if I asked my high school students who were largely Black or African American, I don't think they knew as well. So even just that distinction and understanding of how to navigate those, not any good or worse than either, but just understanding how those systems work are important.
But the biggest distinction, I think, is cost. A private school will cost more than a public because the public schools are subsidized by the state.
That's right.
And that's why the students of that particular state get that benefit. And when you go to a private school, they don't have that subsidy coming in from the state at that level.
That's right. Yeah, and I want to kind of stick there as well, because what I've seen, I think, from afar, and honestly, some events I've been to with Dewey that have put on through Wells, but also just kind of refreshing and researching what you all are doing. There's a good amount of collaboration and sharing and working together between public HBCUs and private HBCUs, I think largely because of your leadership and that of Dr. Lomax. But we'd love for you to speak to that as well, and about why you guys choose to collaborate and work so closely together.
Yeah, and again, that's another good question, because the general public, they don't know the distinction. When you say historically Black colleges and universities, you don't think public or private. You think of HBCUs. So my philosophy has been very clear that UNCF, I don't look at them as a competitor. I look at them as a partner. And so we partner together. Michael has been very clear on that, the importance of that. And when you can show a united front like that, you can actually achieve more. And that's evident because partners, when they come to us, when they want to support HBCUs, they will come and say, hey, we want to support you, but we also want to support UNCF. And I say, I'm for that 100%, because that's a win-win for everybody. A win-win for everybody.
I mean, I'm even curious too, Harry, from like your own leadership perspective, because again, as more professional stalking happened, the word kind of collaboration and networking came up a lot. I think is something you seem intentional about within the work of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. So curious, even from your own individual leadership perspective, why, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but why is collaboration so important to you and the work the College Fund does with some of these incredible partnerships you've been able to build?
Yeah, the collaboration part is so incredible because, as you know, Greg, we can't do it all by ourselves, right? So, and when we can work together and build on top of that, that makes everybody strong. That makes everybody aligned together. And when you're not collaborating, you're pulling against each other, and that takes energy. You can actually get more energy. You can get more energy collaborating together and going in the same direction versus, hey, taking your time and energy to fight against or put up roadblocks. And so anytime we can create an opportunity to partner with someone and to provide them with support in what they're trying to achieve and to achieve their goals, and we can do that too on our end, it's a win-win for everybody. And to your point, yes, I have been very, very intentional about that, mainly because this work is not about an individual, it's about the students that we serve. And I always say this, that we are laying the foundational blocks, the building blocks for sustainability for students that haven't even been born. And so part of that vision is recognizing that the work is bigger than you or bigger than a person, because it's going to change the lives of so many people. So it's important to have that foundational block there. And by having all the support around you, it just makes it even stronger.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's so refreshing, one, to hear that, and two, acknowledging it's not just words, but actions behind it, because you have a real budget and real people and real schools to be responsible for. But I think also what we've seen is like when that happens, there's enough work to go around as it comes to ensuring educational equity and high quality outcomes and options for all students, particularly Black and brown students. But that, I think from the outside in, people could say, well, it's nice, but there's real budgets and limited amount of grant dollars and X, Y, and Z. But in our experience, I think what we've seen from you as well, whether it's funders, whether it's other schools, whether it's corporations, they seem to be more appreciative of collaboration than an organization kind of being super tight, keeping everything in-house, not being willing to talk to somebody else, even though from like a competitive standpoint, that might initially make sense. But in this work, it just feels like the leaders and the organizations that are willing to collaborate and open source their resources and ideas and best practices, they know that almost like that karma is going to be there for them at the end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a win-win. And it's a win-win all the way, because you're winning for your students and providing them with these incredible opportunities, and then they can see that too. And you and I were talking earlier about basketball and about the coaching situation, and one of the things you mentioned was the importance of modeling that behavior that you want. And one of the things that you want to do is to model the right behavior so that others who are watching you can see how it works from that perspective, and then that is very intentional.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's so important. Hopefully something that continues in your work, but also in other work in the corporate space and the philanthropic space. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and the only results can be good for kids and communities and families across the country. And would love to kind of transition, a little bit of a hot off the press thing, but I know you spent time in Tennessee, I believe, and I spent some time in Tennessee as well with schools, but recently around TSU and potentially being awarded this, close to $500 million of a land grant back. I know it's a little fresh and don't know how much you can or want to speak to it, but it feels pretty significant for a number of reasons. And if you feel comfortable, would love to hear your insights.
Yeah. So what you're referencing is a law that's been on the books when the 1890s were created. The 1890 institutions, they were created. Actually, the first land grant was 1862 land grants, and Abraham Lincoln created this. It was a visionary thing. Justice Morrell, a senator from Vermont, actually introduced the legislation. Lincoln pushed it through, and it was going to be funding to support colleges and universities with skills and technical skills like engineering, because recognizing that this country had to get back to work at the end of the Civil War, and that there were going to have to be some type of way of bringing people back together and creating jobs. So they created the land grant colleges and universities, called them 1862 land grants. But what they didn't do was that they made a decision after the end of the Civil War, after creating land grants, that Blacks did not have, former slaves did not have the right to attend these. So Congress went back in, and then they introduced what they call the 1890 Land Grant Act, which is the second Justice Morrell Act. And part of the Land Grant Act, and this is just, I'm just going to be real quick on this, but part of the Land Grant bill is that the states would get, so the federal government would provide funding for the land. Like in Ohio State would be the land grant institution.
Go Bucks. Go Bucks.
Penn State.
Anytime somebody says Ohio State from Ohio, you have to say Go Bucks, or you get extradited from Ohio. So I just had to make sure I could keep my Ohio card. But go ahead. Sorry.
So it's a big land grant, land grant school, and so the federal government would give the money, and then the state would do what they call a dollar for dollar match. So whatever the state, whatever the school would get from the federal government, the state was required to match that, because that's the benefit of having that big land grant in your state. So that's in the law. So when they created the 1890s, the federal government appropriated the dollars for the 1890s, and the same land grant dollar for dollar match applied to the states. But they didn't do it. And so, and because it was an option for them. And also, yes, so they didn't do it. So what you're referencing right now was historic with Tennessee State, where they went back, and to be honest with you, I think it's more than $500 million.
That was going to be my next question. I'm wondering who the accountant was in that math and like taking into inflation and a few other dollar figures of how they landed on that number. But nonetheless,
so they're going to, so there's potentially they will get this, it's almost back payment for that the state was supposed to provide. And so there are 19 of those land grant institutions, HBCUs now, including Tennessee State. And most of the land grant institutions are in the South, like in North Carolina. North Carolina A&T is the land grant for the HBCU, and North Carolina State is the big state land grant school. Same thing in South Carolina. You have Clemson is the land grant, and then you got South Carolina State is the 1890. So most of the southern states will have a land grant college. So we're hoping that this could be a trend that could potentially help solve some challenges for these institutions in terms of having endowments. Can you imagine getting $555 million and putting it in endowment, and what that would do for the sustainability of your institution? So those are the things that I think is important. So I'm glad you raised that question, Greg, because it's a complex issue. But but once you kind of get down to the nitty gritty of it, you recognize that there's some inequities that took place there, and some states got some makeup to do.
That's right. Yeah, and surely that money is deserved by those universities, if not more, as you said. But yeah, to your point, a seminal case that if it goes, I think the way probably you and I want it to go, a landmark case to be a leader for those other states and those other universities in those states as well, which is really important.
Right. And it would be other state legislators. States are independent now. Okay. So and some of them will follow the lead of others, and some of them will just say they don't know what they're doing. But this is a first. This is historic.
And a bit of a lighter question, but there's a rumor going around you are responsible for recruiting Eddie George to be the head coach at TSU. Can you confirm or deny that?
I would deny that every single day of the week. I think it's exciting. I was talking to the president of Jackson State, President.
Because Dion and Eddie. You guys are going to start having powerhouses here pretty soon.
Yeah. So I was telling him, I said, it looks like Tennessee State taking your playbook and bringing in a former NFL superstar to run their program. And and Jackson State's actually been getting a lot of press for that. And prime time, everybody, the president was telling me, whenever they play prime time, it's like a Super Bowl for the school. So I think it's good for HBCUs to have these prominent former NFL players who are taking their skills and talents back to the HBCU world. That's right. So that's pretty exciting.
Well, and also, Dion is Dion, but they're also winning. I think they've only lost one game and they're playing well. And so, it's one thing to get people to the stands and excited, but they're playing well. They're playing good football.
Yeah, considering, that this is his first college coaching gig. So it's pretty impressive. And there's a lot of pressure around it too. The one thing that I'm impressed about, his son is going to play there, and his other son is going to transfer and play there. So that's great.
Yeah, definitely around putting your money where your mouth is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we got to get you out of here. It's man, it could talk to you for a long time. I want to get you out with a few, hopefully, quick questions. 60 seconds or less. What's the future of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund?
Future of Thurgood Marshall College Fund is to continue to do exactly what we're doing now and scaling it to make it even bigger. Meaning that impacting more students and providing more opportunities for our students than we've ever done in our whole entire career. I'm very optimistic about the future. I'm optimistic about our partners and how big this is going to be as it relates to providing scholarships and internships to impact the 300,000 students that we serve.
And what did you say was your favorite public HBCU?
favorite public HBCU. I don't know if I can go on record on the air to say that.
Only joking. Only joking. That's right.
I'm 47.
Good man. Good man. Most innovative thing you're seeing happening in higher education right now, whether it's HBCUs or just higher ed in general?
Well, this free tuition stuff is going to get some traction here. I think they're going to start with the community colleges first.
Yep.
And I know Bernie Sanders put it out there when he was running, and the current administration, they're focusing in on doing free tuition for community colleges. Some private schools have already said that they put a income threshold that families are making, and they will provide the tuition for those families if they make a certain amount of money. So I see that. I'm hoping that'll pick up steam, but that free tuition is something that's pretty innovative right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And also just, of course, that's directly tied to like the student loan debt and crisis, and then graduates coming out and hopefully securing employment. But if not, just the type of financial burden that puts on them as young people getting into the world, and to think about the positive ramifications of that, to your point, incredibly innovative. Right. Last question. What does Square Pizza remind you of?
I tell you, it reminds me of a program that is very exciting and interesting and innovative, and bringing different perspectives and different viewpoints in a very open environment. And that's what I appreciate. To be honest with you, I didn't know what to expect today.
I appreciate you taking a risk. Taking a risk.
But you learn that in athletics, you really take that risk, and I'm glad I did. And my director of communications, Siobhan, told me that you need to get on it and do it. And I said, okay, it's done. So I'm excited about it, and just impressed with the whole podcast. So thank you for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. Thanks for the work, Mr. Williams, all you're doing. I really appreciate you taking time, and also continued best of luck for the future.
Thank you so much, and same to you.